as we continue this exploration of ESMA, memorial site, I need to emphasize this is a memorial site. It's a former detention, torture, and extermination center in Buenos Aires. I want to remind all of us that I will be relying on a particular vocabulary from the cultural sociology that also merges with museum studies. The museum effect is a combination of space that we are gazing at as we speak, objects, which is this floor plan, this layout where detainees were held during the last dictatorship, and images. We're going to see how curators at the ESMA Memorial Site incorporate images into the larger narration of the ESMA Memorial Site. The ESMA Memorial Site is a storytelling institution. It is estimated that as many as 5,000 detainees were processed and held at this particular site. Citedness, authenticity, secondary witnesses, visitors engage in the memorial process. Let us continue. These sites are storytelling institutions, and they provide a lot of visual cues, visual evidence of the last dictatorship. Now let me explain the significance of this particular imagery. We are still in the attic of the casino, which is on the compound of ESMA, which is a huge military naval compound of 17 acres that has been divided and subdivided into human rights organizations that do research, forensic scientists who engage in ongoing investigations, as well as performances by artists, writers, etc., etc. And this particular imagery is a projection onto the wall of this former detention center. And it speaks to one of the features of abduction. This is the epicenter of planning, the casino, where military leaders contemplated, planned, and then orchestrated their abductions of their targets. And initially they would provide perhaps some reconnaissance of their targets, and then they would activate their plan through a task group who would then carry out the abduction. And then once the detainee was held at a site like ESMA, and there were many others, 500 nationwide, estimated 50 in the city of Buenos Aires, the task group would then re-enter the home of the target, of the victim, and confiscate property. Appliances, phonograph records, and books, personal belongings, and those belongings were actually stored in ESMA, in parts of the casino. And this is a photograph that was made by investigators after the last dictatorship. And this speaks to the breadth and scope of abduction. Just not seizing the body, but also seizing property, And this is used by curators as a technique to remind visitors of these activities, of these crimes against humanity. And this part of the tour, again, we're still in the casino. We are in the attic. And what we see in front of us is a workstation. In upcoming episodes, we're going to explore in depth how the last dictatorship utilized this particular space within the casino that was developed as an office. There were many detainees who had skills in the media, writing, journalism, and so on and so forth. And many of them were forced into these offices during the day where they would write stories that would be circulated by the last dictatorship into mainstream popular media that would present the last dictatorship as a benevolent force, that they were actually protecting society, they were providing national security, and so on and so forth. But here is an example of a workstation, of these desks, of these chairs. And there's a lot of imagery that we're going to see and discuss in forthcoming episodes, because the media operations was extremely elaborate. And these generals were quite keen to infiltrate the media, not only in Argentina and the Southern Cone, but also to influence the media in North America, Europe, and elsewhere. But we're getting a little bit ahead of ourselves, so I don't want to go terribly in depth with that commentary. What I would like to do, however, is to give you some more perspectives, viewpoints. As we can see from a distance, we see the collection of property, which was known as booty, war booty, if you will. And here visitors can gaze from a distance while also taking in the immediate environment, while also imagining how detainees might have very well been held in this particular location, in this particular site. This was a site of profanity, of pollution, crimes against humanity that were perpetrated here. And the memorialization process transforms this otherwise profane space into a sacred space, while still leaving residue or remnants of how it was used as a detention center. And in this particular location, we're still in the attic of the casino in ESMA. We're provided with some text. This is testimony of survivors who frequently testified in public hearings as well as public trials of former military officers. And many of those cases continue to be developed and continue to be petitioned to the courts, and some of which are actually in the court docket as we speak. But this gives us a point of view. POV, point of view, another technique. On the floor is a enclosure, and this is the amount of space that a detainee was given while in a prone position. And it's cut into the floor for purposes of allowing us to understand and to interpret how this particular space was used in the course of crimes against humanity. But the curators provide more information. And this is the testimony of a survivor, Luis Alberto Vasquez. And his imagery, his memory, is now being displayed in ESMA. So in the course of his testimony, in the course of his description, he visualized what it was like to be held in the attic of the casino. These detainees were hooded, oftentimes for much of their confinement. And this is an image where the upper portion of the panel is the edge of the hood. So he is still hooded, but he can see through his feet activities that are unfolding in front of him. He is being shackled, like many of these detainees. He is able to see a military officer who is carrying a bucket that was used for sanitation as a toilet, and he can see fellow detainees in front of him. This visualization is a very important part of the memorial site that allows visitors to share the point of view of detainees, making that connection in what we call secondary witnessing. I'm going to pause there, and we're going to pick up with these issues in other episodes.